Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Primetime One Fishing Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Z. This is installment 2 of the Primetime One Fishing Podcast, and I've got a very special guest with me today. A man who is known from the halls of the Italian American Club to the shores of Revere Beach. A man who always will catch. You may catch fish, or you may catch a beating from him if you don't catch fish, because he just gets so mad if you don't catch fish. This guy one time caught a fish so big it knocked his pants off. Let me introduce today's guest, a very good friend of mine, an excellent fisherman, Bobby Lospo, the captain of the Lotta Changes. Bobby, welcome to the Primetime One Fishing Podcast.
Thanks, Anthony. I knew you had to bring that one up about the pants off.
Yeah, we're going to talk a little bit about that later. And folks, make sure that you send the kids out of the room on that one because it may get a little bit vulgar, a little bit graphic over here. But we'll get to that all in due time. Happy to have you with us today. Second installment of the podcast over here. And basically, it's just a place for kind of like I say here, the mission statement of Primetime One Fishing, a place for average Joes to seasoned pros, from talking shop to talking shit, breaking balls, and talking about fishing, all in the name of good fun and camaraderie. So I think you'll fit right in here with the mix of what we do today.
Sounds good.
Absolutely. So, Bob, you sort of represent the old guard here, if you will. You've been around a little while. You've seen a lot of different things out there. You've been fishing quite a few years. Tell us, how did it all get started with you? Where did it all start?
Well, it's kind of funny because, when I was a kid, I don't even remember, like if I was 6, 7 years old, I would get together with my father. My father had this love. He knew some people down Martha's Vineyard, and he had their love for the island. So we got together, and he would take vacations, and off to the vineyard we went. We'd get a hotel, and, in the morning we'd be off to Church's Pier and grab a charter boat, a private charter boat out of there.
Wasn't the Orca by any chance with Captain Quint, was it?
No, but it was close because my first boat that I remember was called a Peruca, and the captain used to let me drive the boat, and it wasn't or pilot the boat, if you want to say, but it wasn't that typical, GPS that we have now. It was going by compass bearings and stuff like that. So it was kind of tough.
You remember those days? I mean, that's, you really, there's a whole generation of people out there that really don't understand what it was to be out there in a boat before GPS. I mean, since I've been, active and on the water here since probably like the very early 90s. Okay. And granted, I wasn't at that time when I was that young running boats by myself. But I mean, I remember being out there on boats where it was, if you had some fog out there, it was, you better understand situational awareness. You better understand compass bearings, power settings. Hey, all right, 310 degrees northwest at 2,800 RPM for X number of minutes. And you better understand that it's a whole new world out there. So
You are damn right. I'll tell you, back then it was buoy hopping. And buoys, we had the biggest technology was a Loran.
And that just basically would just dial in on the little piece of metal out there.
And it would bring you from point A to point B. But it wouldn't tell you what's in the middle.
Well, actually, I'll walk that back. That was more radar fixing. Would look on the metal. But you're right. The Loran, it just as you put it, it was A to B. It was basically just based off of lat long dead reckoning, pretty much.
Correct.
And you look at the technology that we have out there now. I mean, you're going to see in another couple of weeks here when the Primetime One goes back in the water. I had a whole electronic suite rebuilt. I had Gio over in Revere doing it. Gio from All New Upholstery.
Nice.
He's got a new name for the company right now, and it's just drawn. It's escaping me right now, but anyone from the area that knows Gio from All New, he's getting into boat electronics right now. He redid the entire cabin, did the entire electronic suite, so we're going to have some really nice electronics in this. But just what you're talking about, I mean, there was an era where GPS was not the thing. It was, you had to have good situational awareness, and even fish finders. I mean, you had some. I remember on your boat, you had some older electronics out there, and like you were
definitely,
you were like one of those submarine technicians on the movie from Hunt for Red October out there. I mean, having to dial in that stuff. You had to know about water temperature, saline content, and things like that, just to make some of those things work. It was pretty impressive that how you understood that old technology.
It's kind of crazy because not only did I have the older models that looked like a big TV screen and stuff like that, 12-inch screen, then when we got the newer models, oh my God, it's like graduating. It's like a whole new world, But getting back to where I started in Martha's Vineyard with my father, we, like I said, we chartered a boat and stuff like that, and we would join the Bluefish Striped Bass Derby every September, October. And October was my birthday, so I says, this is great, But it was great. We had kind of novelties and stuff like that, and we'd go to these novelty shops, and Like you say, people talk about rods and rails. I didn't grow up on a rod and rail. I grew up on a drop line. And I don't know if anybody knows what a drop line is, but all it is a square with the line, and you just keep on taking the line and going around and around and around with it, and you just pulled in the fish just like that, And I used to catch some big fish off just docks over there, and you wouldn't believe my bait.
What were you using?
Go ahead. It started off bologna. Bologna was my bait.
Come on.
I had no bologna. That was it,
All right, bullshit. How about that?
And then I graduated to a hot dog. All right? Meaning
hey,
the
wait
same
a minute.
thing.
Where's this going at?
Well, it was true. It was because the skin was a little bit tougher. The hot dog stayed on long. See, the bologna would just disintegrate in the water. The salt water would just take it apart. But that's how I learned how to fish. And it was great, So... Anyways, in the mornings, we would start off like 5 o'clock in the morning, and we'd go to this place called a pit stop, get our breakfast and everything else, and then get off to the boat and that we chartered and stuff. And it would only be me, my father, maybe 2 other people or whatever. He would charter the boat privately. We'd get out there, and the captain would turn around to me and say, listen, just steer 360 degrees, and here we go. I had no idea what they were doing, but, the thing is that we always caught fish out there. These guys are like the guys I fish with now. They know their stuff, so, I could just tell you when we were down in the vineyard, they first taught me how to use outriggers, and that was phenomenal. To see 4 lines hit at one time is like insane.
Yeah, you're the master of the outrigger. On the prime time, I don't have outriggers on it. I've just basically gone to, basically just putting a few lines out there. Well, you do. Well, okay, because the poor man's outrigger over there with the planer boards, but that's really about it. But you do have a nice setup out there, and I've seen you troll 6 to 8 lines at one time off of your boat, which is pretty impressive, and that's all made possible with the outriggers. And it's one of those things. It's definitely, like they say, Scotch is an acquired taste. That's an acquired skill. You have to really understand the finer points and the nuance of how to work that. And I got some video footage that we'll look at here a little bit later. And maybe we can talk. You can talk to some of the members of the audience over here about some of those finer points of setting the outriggers out there. I know that you're pretty detailed about that.
Yep.
And trolling is definitely your thing. That's been like your signature play out there.
Kind of funny, not anymore though. I changed that after last year.
Wait, so this season you're making a big change in the program here?
I'm doing a double. I'm sticking with trolling, but I'm not going to stick with trolling all the time.
So this would be like in the NFL, the equivalent to going from the Earhart-Coryell system to you're going West Coast offense now?
There you go.
All right, so we're putting in a whole new play calling structure, a whole new language and everything, putting in a whole new playbook, new personnel groupings. Wow, all right. Bill Belichick, I think, would be pretty proud of you over there.
Well, as long as we have fish on board, that will tell it.
Well, absolutely. And one season to the next, you never know what you're going to get. We've had some years up here where, it's been horrific. And then we follow it up a year later with, it's a season, for the history books.
It is.
So
you
never know what you're going to get. Hopefully we like to see a more averaged balance. It's nice when you get those seasons over there where, basically you can walk on the fish out there. Bluefish in the past few years have kind of been like that. And there was a stint there where for a while we weren't seeing bluefish.
That was a couple of years like that, where were the bluefish? Then all of a sudden last year was like a bluefish year again, so.
Yeah, and I think me and Steve might have touched on this on the last podcast. One of the things, there were some people I remember not too long ago trying to start the conversation of we've overfished bluefish. That's why there's no more bluefish. Well, first off, there's almost zero. I won't say zero, but almost zero commercial value for them. It's a very small commercial market. They're a great game fish, but as far as table fare is concerned, they're not really a very good fish. So people fish for them recreationally. They're a lot of fun to catch. So they're all catch and release for the most part. So this whole conversation that people were trying to start, but we've overfished them and destroyed that fishery, that's a lot of baloney. And the results have spoke for themselves because the bluefish have not only come back, but you remember we were seeing basically 6 to 8 pounders, 24-ish inches was an average bluefish. Now we get them 11, 12 pounds, 30 to 32 inches on average. And we're seeing some of them up here like you only would see down in the vineyard where you get those 17, 18 pounders. That was unheard of up here. Onesies and twosies, I'm not going to say that that's the average fish, but onesies and twosies, there's that 17 pounder that's out there nowadays.
I don't remember the year, but close to 8 years ago, I was in the Mass Stripers tournament, and I won it with I won the bluefish category with a 15.5-pound blue, which was like 36 inches and 15.5 pounds, and that was a monster fish. They considered it. But like last year, even the guys that were in our club were well over 15, 16, 17 pounds,
Yeah, I'm trying to remember. I think it was George Gagnon. I think
Quigley.
Quigley was the year before. I think George Gagnon got top spot on bluefish last year.
Yeah.
I'd have to go consult my record books over here. We'll have to go look into the archives on this one to officially validate it. But it was whatever it was a very respectable fish. I mean, and it only goes to show you, back in the day, the average fish was 6 to 8 pounds, 24-ish inches. They were fairly lean fish, and now we're starting to see bluefish come in here averaging 11, 12 pounds, and you have onesies and twosies. You're getting those 16, maybe even a 17, 18 pounder nowadays, breaking right around 34, 35 inches. So, that was something that you would typically only see down in the Cape and Islands, where you have that, that warmer water that's more influenced by the Gulf Stream.
It's beautiful.
And you're starting to see those fish make their way up here. So I think that really speaks to the health and the, the sort of strength of the fishery that's out there. And it sort of goes back to what we just talked about. We're going to have good years. We're going to have bad years. People try to start these conversations now that, one bad year, oh, yeah, that's indicative. We've overfished everything. We're destroying our oceans. It's pollution. It's this. Look, we have good years. We have bad years. It's just how things go. So, hopefully, we'll see things a little bit more moderated. When you have those bad years, it's bad. When you have those great years, it's amazing. But it'd be nice to stay right in the middle of those two things right there. That's really where I kind of like to see it myself.
Definitely. And the other thing that the abundance of fish brings the abundance of boats, and I don't want to see that either because, we were at spots that, it was like a parking lot. You have, the parking lot of, like Home Depot, and that's exactly the space that you have like 50 boats in one area fishing for stripers, and it's crazy.
Well, along the lines of that, a lot of people I know that fish for tuna that are getting out to Stellwagen, they've said that, ever since Wicked Tuna became such a popular show, the show a lot of the tuna fishermen have somewhat become victims of their own success, in the sense that the show has been so successful and has been so well received that it's inspired a lot of people to get out there, get the tuna gear, venture out to Stellwagen, and try their hand at the game. So, there's always been boats out there, but a lot of the people that I talk to that fish out there pretty regularly saying that, you're starting to see, they've seen a very big uptick since the show started with the number of boats that you're seeing out there. And again, talking to your point, I remember a couple of years ago when we had that solid season. What was it in 22 when the fish were all over the place in Boston Harbor? It was literally like a parking lot out there.
Definitely.
It literally was. There was a day out there I counted just within eye shot there were well over 150 boats.
Yeah. I get away from them. I can't fish like that. That's not even fun fishing to me.
See, here's what's crazy about that. Okay, and this is something I think that's kind of an interesting observation here. Now, some people might look at this and say, Z, you know what? I think you're sort of showing your hand over here, and maybe that you're not a very good fisherman, because if you're really thinking this deeply about making excuses for not catching fish, what's that saying about you? Okay, all joking aside here, but I think there's something to be said for this. When you get that many boats out there, it doesn't matter how many fish you're marking. There's so many lines in the water at any given time. It becomes basically just, laws of probability. What are the odds those fish are going to hit your line? I remember that day, it was one of those days I was out there, I was talking to you. And you said that you were out in the offshore grounds. I said, everybody's over here. We're marking fish. They're all over the water. There's bait everywhere. And you said, yeah, that's exactly why I don't want to be in there right now. And I remember thinking to myself, like, okay, sure, you go do your thing out there. And the thing is, I stayed in there. And I'll tell you what, I struck out that day. I think I may have got there a little bit too late for when the bite was going. But the more and more I thought about this, I said to myself, there's so many boats, there's so many lines out here right now. What are the odds these fish are going to take one of yours? And then the other thing, too, is when you go on social media, particularly Facebook and Instagram, and you see that there's a couple of people out there who posted pictures of we caught in this particular location, like right in that particular area, that fleet of boats. Yeah, you're hearing from like the 5 or 6 guys that did well and caught fish, but that's 5 or 6 out of probably 150 boats that were out there, okay? I'm sure out of the remaining 140-ish boats, a number of them have Facebook and Instagram accounts, and what I'm trying to say is start looking between the lines of who's not posting information out there.
That's a bad pun, Anthony. Look between the lines, because that's what you had it, though.
There you go. That one definitely went over my head. But no, you know what? I mean, obviously that's a great thing that you see the fish out there too. But moral of my story and why I mentioned that is, folks, if you ever find yourself in that situation out there where okay, you're seeing that there's boats everywhere, you're seeing that there's a lot of life, and then you come back and you see, oh, this one caught this one posted on Instagram, this one posted on Facebook. Keep in mind sometimes that's not necessarily telling you the whole story. You're hearing from the people who catch. You're not necessarily hearing from the people who don't catch. What are they going to do? Post a selfie of themselves saying, oh yeah, well, I totally struck out today. Look what happened over here. We marked fish all day long and we didn't catch shit. Like, no, nobody ever posts stuff like that. So it is crazy, just when you just think about it from that perspective. But I also understand why you get away from those areas, because it becomes hard to maneuver in there. And I remember in that particular instance right there, thinking to myself, like, all right, if I hook up, I get this guy who's literally about 30, 40 feet away from me. That fish is going to make a run right into their lines, or it's going to go this way, and it's going to wind up in underneath that guy's boat, chafing off. I mean, it just gets to a point where sometimes when you're in those areas right there, it's a little bit counterproductive. So I mean, on those great seasons where we see big numbers of fish, sometimes, just like you said, you see so many people out there that now it's like, well, okay, yeah, there's a lot of fish around, but there's also a lot of lines in the water. Absolutely. So things average out.
It is. It's insane. You have to pick your area. You have to stick to your guns, because you can't go chasing the whole ocean, to find out. You can go from spot to spot, but you have to, give it a valiant effort, on that day.
And that's one of the things that I shifted gears with last season. I remember going into last season, like I do every year. I sit down, I look at all of my data from the season prior to that, and in seasons plural prior to that, and I start looking at, okay, what worked for me last year, what didn't work for me. And one of the things that was one of my takeaways from last year was I would work a spot, and I'd work it for about a half an hour, 45 minutes, and then I'd pick up and move on, kind of trying to go with the run and gun strategy. And there's a lot of people who have a lot of success by that, in the sense that, okay, this spot's not producing after 30 to 45 minutes. You're not seeing enough signs of life. Okay, I mean, you may not catch, but all right, are you starting to mark fish there? Are you starting to see oil slicks on the surface, right, from a feed that was taking place? Are you seeing that there's bait active out there? Are other people hooking up? If you're not starting to see signs of life, pick up and move somewhere else. And I've always bought into that adage right there, but the more I've thought about that is, no, you know what? Sometimes maybe I'm giving up on a spot a little bit too early. So that was one of the takeaways from last year, and I noticed that I had a little bit more success just grinding it out sometimes on those spots rather than picking up and moving. And just like you said, sometimes, you just got to have the boldness to break away from the fleet. That there's that fleet of boats over there. I mean, yeah, everybody's out there. There's literally 100 boats out there, and there are fish in that area. But, hey, there's so many lines in the water. There's not a lot of room to maneuver. Sometimes you just got to be bold and make a decision to go outside the fleet, and that seems to have worked pretty well for you.
It's been good. What you got to remember is that Massachusetts, we're in what I call the abyss. We're in this area it's a horseshoe. It's a U. So the stripe of migration goes through that. The fish come from New Jersey and everything and come down the Cape Cod Canal. Once they go to the Cape Cod Canal, they can go right or they can go left. If they go left, they're coming into the U. If they're not, they stay out. And then we get nothing. But they are creatures of habit, and you go to your fishing spots that There's only so many fishing spots that are around there, and that continuously have fish the same places.
So it's interesting that you mentioned that, because that's something that I've said for a long time. And I get exactly what you're talking about. And hopefully Jeff and Jeff here are good friends from After All Audio Productions, can maybe do a little good post-production work and get us a good J&J, there you go. Get us a good map of Massachusetts so we can kind of have the better situational awareness in what you described. But basically what you're describing is, as that migration happens, right, they hit that fork in the road just a little bit to the north of Martha's Vineyard there, where they can kind of stay in Buzzards Bay, and then they can come up around basically
Cape Cod Bay,
Atlantic side of the arm of the hook of Massachusetts there, or they can go left, come up into the Cape Cod Canal, in which case they're in Massachusetts Bay. The more northerly they go, they'll wind up in Boston if they stick to the coast and kind of hug the left side of it, or they can kind of veer off to the right, end up on the edge of Stellwagen, or make their way up towards Cape Ann. So I get what you're saying, is it creates this really weird sort of fork in the road for them, where if they basically stay to the right, they go through Buzzards Bay and stay out on the outside of Cape Cod, we may not see those fish come through in big numbers.
Exactly.
Right.
Think of this. Gloucester, 8 miles west of Gloucester, all right, is the Stellwagen Banks.
Well, west you'd be in Beverly, so you got to be south.
Well, northwest, all right, southwest. I'm sorry.
There you go.
And you go at Stellwagen, you get the northwest corner of Stellwagen right there, all right, and it goes all the way to the tip of P-Town.
Exactly.
So if you look at that, you got a mountain underneath the water, all right, about 300 feet over there that goes up to about 90 feet. If they, like I said, if they come inside, they're inside of Stellwagen. If they're not, then guess what?
And that's the other thing, too, is let's take a look at what's out there at Stellwagen. You got bluefin tuna out there. You got sharks out there. You know, those are your apex predators in that particular environment, okay? And they've got those fish have to make their way through that area where you have those bigger fish that are feeding on. I mean, typically, tuna are going to be feeding more on bluefish than on bass, right? That's another component to it as well. But, you know, I mean, now you're starting to see these videos that go viral every now and again. There was one, I remember, a year or two ago, they were on the Cape. They were trolling. They caught a striper, and a great white shark came up, grabbed probably what was a 36, 37-inch striper, literally shredded the thing in half. So if you start thinking about that, you know, if those fish, even if they do go to the outside, for them to kind of come into, like you said, this no man's land area where we're at back here, okay, they've got a lot to work through there. You know, they're on the menu of a lot of different things that are basically hanging out in those areas. So yeah, those good seasons, it's dependent upon largely whether or not those fish go left and come through the canal or if they go wide. But also, too, it's dependent on bait.
Makes you think, well, how would you like to be a mackerel? You know, everything eats them.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a very long life longevity out in those waters out there as a mackerel. But yeah, it's basically it's the migratory patterns of the fish, and it's also what the bait's doing too. You know, I mean, we get years up here where the bait you can go out there and you can walk on it almost. Then we have years where the bait's hard to find and the fish are going to be hard to find too.
You know, we go through an evolution. I mean, if you look at some of the techniques that we used, I mean. It started off with Rapala lures, and then it turned out to be you got what they call the umbrella rig, which are niners and stuff like that. And,
which that's really where the niner came out of. It was born out of the umbrella rig.
Exactly. And then one year it was all tube and worm, and everybody was using a tube and worm, and nobody ever heard of it, and then we went to live bait, so, I mean... It's been a big evolution, and that's why I'm saying I'm changing my tactics a lot this year because of the success I had last year.
Well, one of the things, that you see down in Jersey and, out in New York and Long Island, a lot of guys troll the Mojo rigs down there. And, I sort of adapted my playbook to sort of encompass that as a package within the primetime one offense here, if you will.
There you go.
But that's something I think that's going to become more and more popular up here now because clearly they're having a lot of success with that down there. And, hey, that success will find its way into adjacent waters. You give it enough time. But that's something, like I said, you see that more down there, but you're starting to onesies and twosies see people start to fish the Mojos and things like that up here, which historically weren't fished around here. Kind of like what you're saying, you look at the advent of Rapalas to umbrellas to tube and worms to the, to the niner rigs and everything. Yeah.
Exactly. It's funny because my buddy Howard, Howard, he's been out with me a lot, and
if we can get Zizzer on the show, I'm trying to get Howard to come in a little. Him and Zizzer do a little tag team.
He will.
But anyways, Howard brought Zizzer's agent is the problem. His East Coast representation is really kind of putting the monkey wrench into the equation here. But we'll see if we can get him on.
But what I was bringing up Howard for is Howard, this guy always gives me gifts, knives, fillet knives, from that to a bottle of Diplomatico.
He gave me a little niner rig when I
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
Now, the little niner rigs,
mini one.
They're about this big, all right, and they only spread out there. What's great about them is, if you ever use a niner rig, that you're going to sit there and lobster traps a la galore. You can maneuver those smaller ones anywhere, so it's really nice to have them, and it's a good ammunition to have in your arsenal,
Yeah. And, I try to mix things up out there, sort of taken from what you showed me a lot of with the success that you've had with trolling. I try to run situations where I'll run, 2 niner rigs in short, and then I'll run 2 live baits out long.
Yep.
And I showed you that sheet, that laminated sheet that kind of looked like the play calling script at a football game, but like I had all the different configurations of where I would set things out there. And that's kind of an interesting thing too. And, something I'll share with people is, be detailed out there. Take your time. Think things out. Sometimes when you're out there and you're trying to put together a trolling spread, sometimes I see a lot of people just sort of do this on the fly of here, throw this one out there, and yeah, that looks like about enough line, and here, put this out, and that's probably about right.
But you got to stagnate your lines, because if you don't, you're in for a big, if one fish hits, and if it's a bluefish, go across all the lines, and then you're out of business.
Well, and that's exactly where I was going with that one. Is I put an awful lot of time and an awful lot of thought into this, and just like you said, staggering. My stagger is the far line, and when I'm trolling for stripers, is going to be at about 120 feet. The second closest line is going to be staggered at 20. It's going to be 100 feet off the stern, and then the two short lines are going to be 80 and 60 respectively.
Exactly.
So typically, what I'll do is I'll run a 6-ounce trolling weight on that far line that's out at 120 feet, the number one line. Get that one out far and get that one down a little bit deeper. And then usually at the second closest one, the number 2 position, which is going to be 100 feet off the stern of the boat, a 3-ounce trolling weight with a live bait. And then coming back at 80 feet, you're going to have a 9er rig, which I want to have that one down.
It's a smart fisherman. That's the way you do it.
It's not only staggering distance, but it's also staggering depth in the water at the same time too. Because
you could have it. You could have a lure out there, 9ers or whatever. Maybe the color is no good that day. You bring out a green one, you bring out a white one, or you bring out a black one, and all of a sudden the black one works. You don't know what they're going to take that day.
Absolutely.
So you got to throw it out.
No, and 9er rigs, I run green, white. I run the blue one, which is emulating the mackerel, and then the blackbacks, which are emulating heron or pogies to a certain point. So I try to mix the colors up, but generally I try to run 2 at a time. And if I'm not having success in the green or white, I'll shift over to the blue. And I've seen that happen before, where sometimes when you make that shift, game on. It's like flipping a light switch. We've seen that before. I remember we saw that a couple of years ago. You remember that one? It was where they were only hitting the green that day.
What I like to do is, when nothing's happening or whatever, get the 9ers out there. Because just like they say, they're 9ers. So you got 9 hooks right there on one line. So you get 4 lines, that's 36 hooks out there. So you bring them out there, it will attract the fish. That's why our buddy Kirk, he turns around, he's got glitters out there, he's got all kinds of things to attract these fish. I mean, it looks like a Christmas tree that he puts out there, and it does, it works.
It does, and it works for him. Sort of what I was talking with Steve on the last episode. Hey, if it works for you, do it. These are some of the things that work for me, that work for Bobby.
Yep.
Hey, maybe they'll work for you, maybe they won't work for you. Maybe it's the gear that you fish or the way that your boat's configured, things like that. But don't be afraid to experiment and try some new things out there. And that's what I got really good at doing, was just kind of taking a lot of things that Bobby did and saying, okay, look, he staggers them out over there, and okay, all right, let me look at that staggering. And that's where I came up with this 20-foot offset from 120 back to 60 feet, staggering them at depths as well, mixing color patterns in over there. And I come up with names of these different trolling configurations, which is where I had that whole laminated sheet, so I can put in my notes that, okay, today I was fishing the deuce, or I was fishing the split set today, and I'll know from my notes what that configuration is, and I'll know that, all right, that was a configuration that was working at that particular time.
I don't think you can get that technical. You're good at that, but the thing is that if you get that technical, what happens is that you don't take out the current, you don't take out the speed of the boat, you don't take out, what you pick up on the way as to seaweed or anything else. So you can't really judge, the speed of the boat and what's going on. I mean, sometimes I had to resort to grabbing a bucket and putting it overboard to slow me down, just because my trolling speed was going too fast.
Yeah, when you get those days where you get the wind at your back, that's where you're going to need to do that. I've seen people do that before. Yeah, and it also depends too. It depends on how your boat's powered. I usually shut one of my engines down when I'm trolling.
I only use one engine.
Yeah, I go a lot of odd day, even day logic. So on an even number day, I'm going to run the right motor. On an odd number day, I'll run the left motor. And try to keep them within line. If I start to see that there's a weird split, maybe I'll break protocol right there from seeing like, okay, the left one's got 3 more hours than the right. Okay, hey, it doesn't matter that that's an even day. I'm gonna, or the other way around. Sorry, then I'll run that particular.
Well, that's
motor.
all about trolling. Now we'll go to our, Malatesta is the guy who taught me to sit there for a while and go over the school of fish, and that worked out pretty good last year.
Just before we break out of that, just before we get into that, let's talk a little bit about the trolling setup here. And I got some good video. We shot this on your boat last year. Okay, aptly entitled "Setting Lines Out."
You go. Yeah, you're probably going to see me with all the counters on the rails, because that's.
Okay, so you go with the Stinger rig.
Yep.
One on the nose. One.
Now, it doesn't
one.
really matter where you put this. You could just stick it into the back. It doesn't really matter if it's hooked or whatever, but it's going to be exposed.
Okay, so there's your far line going out first.
Good to do these first because you don't have to worry about putting them out with the other line.
Just like a clothesline, just hook it on and just put out your clothes. But that's putting out the line. But you put that out about 30 feet at first and get it in the water. When you start to let them out, you keep your thumb on the bail and you got it on release and you just keep on letting it out. And like I said, if you have other lines out there, the best thing is to get your outriggers out first.
So you have the line counters built into all of your rails right there.
Yes.
I don't have them on mine, so what I've done is on my 320 GTs, they've got the level wind on them. And I know the level wind is going to go basically one left to right is going to be 20 feet at the speeds that I'm going to be operating
I was laughing at you at that time, and I says, side to side. What is he talking about?
Yeah,
and
one gazunta.
Yeah. Gazuntas.
Okay, all right. Let out 6 gazuntas on this one. But no, that works. And also,
it works.
Colored line too.
You did right now. Colored line. I always lost track of the color afterwards, But colored line.
Yeah, one strand at 20 at 25 feet.
25 feet. Yeah, they have them.
But yeah, that's a great way of gauging distance. It's even easier, and it just takes the mental gymnastics out of it when you do it the way that you do it right there. Just the gear that I fish with doesn't have the line counter built into it, so I've just gotten accustomed to doing it that particular way. But again, so whatever works for you folks, hey, if that's if the line counter is going to be more convenient for you, it's going to take the mental gymnastics out of it, go with that. If you've got the level winds or you've got the colored braided line out there that you're more comfortable with and you can keep that sort of focus on it, go with that. Go with what works. But the biggest thing is just to have your distances and your depth staggered out.
Well, it's not just for the setup, because I'm not even talking about the setup. You have the counter lines that are out. When the fish hits, now, if you knew it was at 120 feet and it's now at 240 feet, you knew the fish just did a 120-foot run, know? So where the fish is out 240 feet right now. Guess what? Take your lines in, you're going to have to fight this fish, and you're going to have to slow down the boat to get it in.
You're going to probably get back in town. And you keep on going, because your strategy is once that first one hits, there's probably going to be a second or third one in trail that are getting ready to take position.
Correct.
So that's the thing is, particularly
Stay in the school.
Particularly with these bigger stripers, when they hit with force and they start making a run. So if that fish is running off that way and you're still motoring off at 2.5 knots that way, it's nothing to have, 200, 300 feet of line out, within a matter of seconds.
Correct.
And that's an awful lot of slack that can get into the line right there. So there's, the more line that runs out, more chance there is to get slack in that line, more chance there is to lose that fish. We've seen that happen more than a couple of times.
Plus, not only me and you, I don't have too many people on my boat at times. And, when you've got 5 lines out and you're with 2 people, 4 lines hit, guess what? Take out the equation, you got 4 lines and 2 people.
Remember when we were out with Sherry that day? We had four lines go off at one time. We got 3 out of 4, which wasn't bad.
Sherry must be a good luck charm, because every time I go out with her, I get into a school of big, big fish. We can't handle it. It's crazy, but hey, who knows?
She's an up and comer for sure. Definitely keep your eye on her. That's my girl right there. She's my sleeper pick for the season to have a breakout year.
She really is a good mate. Listens, learns very fast, and resilient.
Yeah, very, very much so. Yeah, no, I think she's due for a breakout season. She
loves it.
She's home now,
and she lives right in the heart, so it's great.
Yeah, so I'm looking forward to her getting back out there. I wish her a lot of success this season. I'm sure she's going to do very well. One of the things too, we just noticed over there, you're big on the stinger rig, and I've kind of moved away from that. I still keep stinger rigs on the boat. What I've noticed, and I'm sure a number of other people out there, it's not exactly a secret, bass will attack head first. So, probably
Correct.
8 out of 10 times you're going to get that first. You're going to get that on the forward hook of that stinger.
See, not too many people know that, though. It's kind of funny, because you say, oh, geez, stripers hit head first. How the heck do they do that? One time I had a stinger rig, all right, and I was in one of my spots, and believe it or not, I got 2 stripers on the stinger hook. So I had 2 hooks.
I've had that with bluefish before.
Weird. I know. I saw that. That was 2 years ago or a year ago.
Yep, 2 years ago. But yeah, I mean, I'd say 8 out of 10 times the stripers are going to attack a bait head first.
And what do the bluefish do?
They attack tail first.
Right.
So what I've done is I've adapted. I showed you those. I call them the split stingers that I made.
Yep.
Where I run about 80,
those are nice.
Yeah, it's 80 yards of either monofilament or fluoro to that first hook, and then I run basically a 6-inch steel leader from that first hook back to the second one. The thought process being, hey, if you get that mixed bag of stripers and blues, maybe you get that that one bluefish that you might not have gotten. But that's generally the only time of the season when we start to see that mixed bag, that overlap, where we get it like the very end of June, beginning of July. We're getting the onesies and twosies, those first blues that are coming in. That's about the only time that I go to stingers. And another thing that I've adapted over the year is just I've just found that for me personally, I just think you're better off having that one when you're targeting specifically stripers, just having that one hook right there in the front. If that's where 80% of your action is, what's the sense in having that other stinger?
And like you said, who really wants bluefish? I mean, great fight. But,
Yeah, not the best table fare out there.
Yeah. Some people, you have to adapt to that taste,
Yeah, it's an acquired taste.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah, very much so. So, that's basically been your thing right there, is just trolling. So this year you said you're going to kind of shift gears and you're going to go more towards bait fishing, you're going to go more towards drifting?
I am going to be more weeding out what I want to do for the day. So I'm not going to waste any time. I'm going to go out, catch my bait, do what I have to catch my bait, troll while I'm doing it. I found remarkable, a lot of people will go just for bait. When I go for bait, once I get the first one, guess what? That first one's going out already while I'm still doing
So that's the thing.
mackerel fishing.
That's something that's definitely paid dividends for you over the years.
Big time.
What you do, very simply as you just described, is you start off just running 2 sabiki rigs out behind the boat. You wait until you get your first couple of mackerel, and then you're going to throw a mackerel with a 3-ounce trail. Throw it out there. Okay, so that's one bait that's out there, but you're still fishing.
Exactly.
Okay, now
that's what's nice about having outriggers at that point.
It allows you the luxury to do that. When you're trying to do that, basically fishing out of the corner or something like that, and then you have basically your 30-degree holders there midship. Yeah, it looks like it's sure, I can get that mackerel out a little bit. It's no bargain. It never works in reality as well.
Take your outriggers, put them out about 120, 150 feet. They're out there with the bait that you caught.
Right.
You go to a school of mackerel, all right, inside,
on the inside,
away from you, and then all of a sudden, those lines hit on the outside, and you're like, what happened?
Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I mean, trying to run basically any type of a live bait off of your corner rod holders when you're fishing out of the 30-degree holders for bait. Yeah, it looks like it's doable, and I'm not going to tell you it's impossible. It's just really difficult to do. You got to really be paying attention to it. So that's why when you have those outriggers, you can get those baits out there and still be fishing. And then once you load the live well up, okay, we don't need to fish for bait anymore. So now we'll start running some of the other lines out there. Either 2 more lines, maybe even 4 more lines with mackerel on them, or some mix of mackerel and 9er rigs, or some other artificial. Right. But yeah, you've been basically doing that. Just drag until you get bait. Start setting baits out. Keep dragging for bait, and it's definitely worked for you out there. And you're right. Some people just nope. We're going to get bait, and then we're going to start fishing.
Exactly. Well, Steve is a perfect example of that, which I'm not knocking him, but that's his technique. He'll go out with a double sabiki and then turn around and wait to catch fish. Once he catches the bait, then he'll go for his certain spots to go do his thing. But with me, and I'm not saying I'm right or whatever, but I'm going to do a little bit of both. Once I catch the bait, I put it out on the outriggers. After I get them out on the outriggers, which is nice about the outriggers is the outriggers set themselves. So when you get a big fish or any sort of fish that hits those outriggers, it lets go. And then once it lets go, it gives that little one to set the hook right in its mouth. And mostly every time I have an outrigger, I keep the fish on.
I never thought about that. That's all right. That's a pretty good
because
point.
It puts it right in its mouth.
One of the things I was talking about with Steve is that when we talk about this with bait fishing, Steve, once he starts hitting those first couple of fish as he's trolling for him, he's hitting those first couple of mackerel, he stops the boat. Whereas you keep the boat going for 2 reasons: one, because you're trolling the lines out there, but then that tension that as you move forward is helping keep those fish on there. So Again, when you're fighting a fish and you keep that boat moving, when you get those fish that really make that run, yeah, there's a lot of line out there. There's a better opportunity for a little bit of slack to get in there, but you're reducing that opportunity for that slack to get in there and that hook to drop by virtue
for whatever reason.
Just keeping that boat moving. Yeah, and a lot of people just instinctively. And I remember the first couple times I fished, you say, "Hey, you want me to go neutral?" And you said, "No, it's fine. Keep going."
Right.
And I didn't understand it at first, but I understand it now.
If you let any slack in the line, you reel. I mean, that's the whole thing. If you give slack in the line and you let that fish go, guess what? The fish is shaking the hook or whatever, or trying to shake the hook. You have to keep it taut. Yeah, that's why they call boats tight lines or whatever. Yeah. That's what you want.
No, absolutely.
You know.
So, all right. So you're transitioning here to some different strategies and tactics. So
yes.
Does that mean that we're not going to be seeing this anymore out of the Lotta Changes? This has been your bread and butter here for so long. Here he is in action, folks.
And there's a 9er rig.
There he is. He's got the 9er out. He's fishing by himself.
Yep.
All right. So it looks like you got one line out there with a live bait on that right there. Your outriggers are actually not deployed, surprisingly.
Correct.
So in this one, maybe you just didn't have a ton of bait. I'm guessing that might have been what's going on.
It looks like I'm solo. So
you're definitely solo in that one.
I'm solo, and it's I couldn't handle 4 lines at that point. I would have to have at least one more person on board. I wouldn't use the outriggers like that because it's a nightmare.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And that's a situation where when you are fishing solo in those situations, you're better off fishing 2 lines perfectly than fishing 4 lines half-assedly.
Exactly.
And yeah, you're not putting as big of a spread out into the water, but at the same time.
But the 9 is you got 9 hooks out there plus whatever you got on the other line, So, you can do that with one person. So you got 10 to 12 hooks into the water, or baits.
So one more video clip right here. I just think this is a cool clip. Nothing real dramatic, but you just got to love these nice days. There's no greater feeling when you're it's a nice, calm day. Look at this,
just like tomorrow's going to bring, right?
Just like tomorrow. But, all is well with the world. You get all your lines set up. It's flat, calm. You get the outriggers in play right here. Everything is in perfect harmony, just waiting for that bite to happen.
Yep.
And that's a good feeling.
Oh, definitely.
It takes a lot of work to get the boat situated like that too. There's a lot of time that it takes to get into that position, and then hey, all of a sudden you got lobster gear coming up, or you get seaweed, or you get some guy who just kind of isn't paying attention, cuts right in front of you, does a
That's
quickly
why
on you.
Timing, and you gotta look out. You have to, these. What you're showing right here is it's flat calm out there, which is nice because you can see the lobster traps. But believe it or not, you have these, and you've interviewed some lobstermen and stuff like that. You got these lobstermen that don't know exactly how much line to put out on their plots, and you end up having submerged lobster traps that you just see barely on the top of the water or whatever. So it's
generally
tough.
Those are your recreational kind of weekend warrior types out there. The salty pros, they seem to have a better grasp on that. But yeah, you definitely can get a few landmines out there, a few hidden surprises just below the surface.
Definitely.
But yeah, that's one of the things that's tricky about trolling. The trade-off is you've got to deal and contend with stuff like that, but you're getting a lot more ground covered. So that's working to your advantage too. So let's see, we got another video over here. Got a couple different videos. All right, so this is you and Larry here from a couple years back.
Oh, that's a nice fish.
I think actually this clip I played last week too, talking with Steve about leaders on the last episode. But see this, you see the boat is still moving. So you're fighting this fish. You're bringing in. This is a pretty sizable fish too.
Oh yeah.
You're still running other lines at the same time.
Yep.
Okay.
I think this is where he broke the net. Yep.
Yep, broke the net. There it is.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
Oh, sorry.
Now, hang on. The other line goes here in a second.
Yeah. I think you were on there.
I was filming it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was in the crow's nest. It's a good fish right there. And there's Larry with the second one.
And that's why you get those lines out.
Absolutely. And you see, you got that second one because you kept the boat moving. That
Right.
was the big thing.
Right.
Whereas a lot of people, okay, we're hooked up. All right, go to neutral, rail the other lines in. Like, all right, I get why people do that, but
You're moving with the school.
take a look at how they fish big game down south. Where they're going from marlin and stuff like that. You don't see them stop the boat. They keep on going.
And look at the speed they go.
Well, that's a whole different fishery.
Yeah.
Especially
Oh,
Wahoo. They're fishing at some real serious speeds right
yeah.
there. But I remember that. Those are two really nice fish right there. So what you're saying is there's going to be a chance that we might see you out there just drifting around and just actually running some live baits without trolling this season. That could be in the cards for the Lotta Changes.
Under experimentals. Yes.
Oh, okay, so under experimentals.
Oh yes, I've got some different techniques to try, and last year I was marking fish. I'm using my electronics more, and I was marking fish insanely. Schools of fish, and in smaller water, shallower water, I should say, and it was phenomenal. Because these fish were there. We knew they were there, but they weren't taking what I wanted. So, like I said, now we're gonna go do live baits. We're gonna do chunks. I'm not gonna go chunking or anything else, but then my next thing is going to do some jigs, all right? And not the kind of dancing, but using some jigs, yeah.
All right. So interesting thing right there that you mentioned a second ago, right? How many times have you gone over a massive school, seen this countless times in your boat, countless times on my boat, and you are just waiting for one of those lines to hit and then nothing happens?
I sit there and I go, okay, ready for the hit. Here it goes. And then it goes. But then I will say, ready for the hit. Here it goes, and then nothing. So I go, what happened? We went over the school of fish.
It's proprietary information over here, so I can't give you the exact numbers, but I actually figured out, based upon the spreads that I work, ranging from 120 to 60 feet, numbering the different
positions. I'm dying
positions.
to hear this one now.
Assuming that you're at 2.5 knots, I've actually figured out roughly how many seconds it should take for each of those positions to hit.
I would say 15, 20.
A little more than that, actually.
Really?
Yeah, that far line, going off of the far line right there, and
What's about 150 out?
It's just under a minute. It's about 50 seconds, give or take.
All right.
And that's just based upon your movement, and it's based upon by the time that fish, by the time that rig.
Wait, where is your transducer for the depth finder? Because mine is on the back, on the stern.
mine's on the stern mounted too.
Because some of them are in the middle of the boat, so.
Okay, yeah. I don't know too many people that have them mounted there, but mine's a stern mount.
Okay.
So, yeah. So based upon that, just if you're averaging 2.5 knots, which is about what I'm trolling out there, but it's probably what a lot of people. Some people troll a little bit faster than that. I know some people
actually you should go slower.
4 or 5, and Zizza trolls at about 1 knot.
1.8 is like almost ideal.
But. Yeah, just based upon that, it's like, okay, it's going to be at least 30 to 40 seconds before that 120-foot line, whatever bait you have on that, live pogey, live mackerel that you're trolling, it's going to be at least 30 to 40 seconds before that fish even sees that bait by the time you drag it over them. And then it's going to be another couple of seconds of them coming up to explore it, and then there's going to be that time for them to strike on it. So, yeah, you're probably looking at that 120-footer, you're looking at, that's going to be the longest one right there, probably about 50 seconds or so from the time you mark to the time that potential hit happens. But
so you're more into technology like that. You're more into the science, like it works.
It's simple. It's just simple numbers. I don't know that it's technology as much as it is just all right, how many feet per second are you going if you're moving 2.5 miles an hour? Okay, at 120 feet, he probably sees it at 30 to 40, 10 seconds before it goes for it. Yeah, just kind of looking at it like that. But where I was driving with this whole thing is how many times have me and you been on your boat or my boat or whatever, or each of us respectively, where you mark that big school and then nothing happens, right?
That's happened. And there's another thing that a trick that I like that I was taught by I call him the old man of the sea right there, Dickie Hittinger, and it's called a neutral drop.
Yep.
And when you go over that school and you get all those lines out and you're doing, like you said, 2.5 knots, and all of a sudden you get over the school and you just take the shifter and boom, you put it in neutral and let it drop, and then put it in gear again, and then all of a sudden you get a nice hit.
Yeah, that change in speed will do it sometimes.
Definitely.
Will.
And it will jiggle those baits a little too, so
yeah,
erratic.
It's just like a lot of times when you jig. A lot of times when you jig, fish are going to hit on the drop. right? So the same type of thing happens. You go to neutral, your speed drops off, those rigs start to drop down a little bit. Then if nothing happens, power it back up, and then that might just entice the bite right there. But no, what I was also going to kind of steer the conversation towards was, just because you start marking, you don't know the direction of movement of that spool.
Right.
So here's the thing: you're cruising along, kind of doing this right here. Your your transducer beam is pulsing down like this here. So you mark a school right here, but here's the thing: you're marking, okay, right here, there's a big school, but the direction of travel of that school is this way.
Yeah.
So the thing is, by the time your lines drag through that spot where you're marked, those fish are already over here, and you're off over here. Okay, so there's that aspect of it too. They can be going, all you know is that at a given instant that there were fish right underneath you. You don't know the direction of travel if that's aligned with your course.
Now that's the part of fishing in deep water. You don't have that, you don't have that notion of where they're going. But when you're in close, they're stacked fish, and you know they're in the vicinity, and they're stacked right there in that area. So that's what makes me change a little. If I use my electronics wisely, which I know a lot of captains do, they're becoming a lot smarter with their electronics, and it beats the game. That's why they call them fish finders. Use them.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And, just learning how to really understand what you're seeing in that fish finder out there. I always just say, hey, the basic down scan image, to me, that's the tried and true old school, what I go with. Side scan, I've got it. I work with it a little bit. But that really takes a lot of nuance.
Sure does.
And that's really, to me...
And I have that, but I cannot get used to it.
It's not a good deep water tool.
No.
It really is.
Not at all.
It's a shallow water, and that's it. That's the other thing. So I fish
Unless
a lot
you
of
spend about $2,500 on a good depth finder, but...
Yeah. It definitely works well in that shallower water, about 30 feet and below. I mean, that's really the
right.
optimum zone for that right there. But if you're fishing in 80 to 120 feet of water offshore, that side scan's not really going to do you a whole lot of justice out there. Yeah, that's why I say I stick with just the old school tried and true down scan imaging. But again, tends to work for me. But yeah, the electronics out there really is some great stuff, and it's learning the electronics that's, I think, the hardest part. And in fact, I'm going to have some videos coming out pretty soon, and one of the videos I'm going to put out there, it's about a good 20-minute video. It's all about the basics of sort of understanding the downscan imaging and things like that. And I think for a lot of people out there that maybe don't know some of those finer points, it'd be a good video to brush up on. So check back on YouTube here later on Primetime One Fishing. We'll have some stuff out there. But Bobby, let's just talk about this here for a second here. So as legend has it, you got a fish that was so big it knocked your pants off.
His pants down.
You did get me there.
Look at this. It was so big it knocked his pants off. Whoa! Imagine that.
Hey, the bluefish.
Hey, a North Shore doubleheader, a slot fish and a nice blue. Goes back to what we talked about a little while ago. Look at those blues, right? That's a pretty sizable blue right there.
I know.
Didn't see
those. Look at the days,
though.
Look at how nice it is out there.
I mean, you gotta love days like that. I mean,
definitely.
That's just the thing of beauty when you get those nice days. How many times have we been out there before and the conditions are not ideal like that? It's another thing you got to contend with. You got to take into account.
Waves and wind and current and I remember me and you were the only ones out one day, and I mean it just, the waves just kept on going, and you were catching mackerel and I wasn't, and I didn't want to go out there because you're out there by yourself, and the waves are pushing you, the lines are pushing you, your lobster traps are right there. It's just not worth it. It's not even worth fishing.
Yeah, you're not always going to get these picturesque days like like we just saw, but yeah, you definitely have to pick and choose your days, and sometimes too, I mean, you got to start looking at areas of structure that you want to target that might be running more north-south. If you get winds that are east and west in situations like that, I mean, good luck trying to troll and be able to maintain any type of. It's doable, but you got to have one person who's dedicated to steering the boat. You've got to have one person, more realistically, two people that are dedicated to just working the lines in the back of the boat. You get to those conditions over there where basically you're trying to go perpendicular to the winds and you're trying to do that by yourself. Yeah, good luck. That one ain't happening.
Well, now you're talking, getting a nice first mate or people that, can work the boat with you and knowledgeable people. That's hard to come by. That's why I'm out by myself a lot.
And that's another reason I'm out by myself. One, everyone wants to go fishing, and very few people want to go fishing at 4 o'clock in the morning. So
you check the lines.
I'm sure you've run into that.
Oh yeah, you check the lines. Go ahead. Nobody wants to check the lines. You're out there. You put out the lines.
Right, and that's where I always this sort of lines up with the spirit of what I always talk about. There's a difference between fishing and then going out there with a beer in one hand and a fishing rod in the other and saying that you're fishing, when the reality of it is you're having a couple beers with your friends and you're just holding a fishing rod in the other hand.
Well, nothing's wrong with that. If
nothing
that's
wrong
what
with
you
it. No, I'm not knocking that. I'm not putting that down. But I'm saying there's a difference between fishing seriously and then just we're just out there having a couple of beers and just a good time. We catch something great. We're out there looking to really do the best of both worlds, but we're taking this a lot more seriously in that sense.
I like the challenge, and it's just like anybody else. They go out there, and I'm looking for the monster fish. That's it. Someday I'll get the monster fish of mine, but the monster fish of mine isn't going to be the monster fish of yours, because everybody's got the bigger fish.
Yeah, absolutely. I've said that now for a good little while. I've figured out how to go to the rock piles just off the beaches and catch fish that are anywhere from 22 to 28 inches all day long. It's not that difficult to do.
Right.
But I've gotten to the point now where it's like, not interested in doing that. I will take my chances with a strikeout trip. I'll take a goose egg. I might even take 2 goose eggs in a row. But if I'm going to get out there and get myself in a situation where I've got a really good chance to get into some sizable fish, even if it's, those days where you can go out there and you can catch those smaller stripers, those schoolies, anywhere from 22 to maybe even 30 inches, give or take. And you can catch dozens of them out there. There's definitely days out there. It's not that hard to do that.
Yep.
I'd rather go out there and just get 2 or 3 monster fish rather than get dozens of small fish out there. And again, I'm willing to take my chances with striking out a couple of times. And, at the end of the day, it all balances out in terms of what you wind up catching, cumulative numbers on the season. But, I've done the same exact thing myself and just kind of gone all in on the notion of, hey, I'm doubling down here, just going for the bigger fish.
Well, not for nothing. Like last year, and not to brag, but last year, I don't think I had one fishless day, even if it was like catching mackerel or whatever, but I had not one fishless day. But the thing is that, I did everything that I'm talking about in this podcast,
Right.
I did everything and I stood by it. But I don't sit there and keep the lines out and just wait for the fish to hit. I change them up. I reel in the lines to check the lines, to see if they were stripped, to find out if there's bait on there.
Yep.
You can't just sit there out there and say, okay, let the lines do it yourself.
No.
One little piece of weed on that line, you're not going to catch a fish.
Yeah.
So.
No, and that's the thing. I think that's the difference between, go back to what I said, that's the difference between, the guys who are out there fishing seriously and the guys who are just, whatever, let's go out there, have a couple of drinks, we'll throw a line in the water, okay, great. Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not trashing that or putting it down, but there's a difference between the serious, disciplined fishermen out there who are doing those types of things, who it's almost becoming more like a job, but realistically what it is a labor of love. You enjoy doing it, but that's what makes the difference between hooking up, is those small differences like you're talking about, the nuances and everything like that. Well, it all
depends on who you have as a crew, and that crew could turn around, when are we going to fish? When are we going to catch a fish? Or they'll be in the cabin and they'll be sleeping, and once they heard that reel go off, and they hear that clicking sound, they come up and the fishermen, all they want to do is reel up a fish, but they don't want to go through. It's just like, who's going to make the pie,
Yeah.
It's hard.
Absolutely. No, and the biggest thing is you just got to put time into it. You're not going to go out there, put lines in the water, and then bang, right off the bat, you start catching fish. I can't tell you the number of times that I've gone out before, and I'm convinced, like, okay, this is going to be a strikeout day, and then just within the last half an hour, bang, that's when everything starts going live. That's when you start really getting fish. And hey, had you just given up a few minutes earlier, you would have struck out for the day. So there's sometimes that you got to go out there, you just got to grind and put hours and hours into it, and all of your fish come. And basically that last half hour of being out there, when you decided to stick with it just a little longer, sometimes you go out and, hey, maybe it's the opposite of that. Maybe you get, half a dozen of them right off the bat, and the rest of the day you don't see a single fish out there. You just got to put the time in. It all averages out over time.
Oh, yeah. But look at the moral of the story. I went from bologna to bait. So B&B, that's it. I went from putting bologna on my line to getting a real bait, mackerels.
You went from bologna to artificials to real mackerel to shifting outriggers.
Oh yeah,
shifting some strategies. So like I said, you've definitely done pretty well accomplished. So, Bob, why don't we wind the podcast down over here with a little bit of show and tell? You brought some pictures in over here, so we'll go through these right now. Tell us a couple of stories about these fish or anything else that sort of reminds you of and maybe triggers another story in your head or something like that. Just blurt it right out. Go ahead, Bob.
We're just sitting here with one big fish at that time, so it was just nice to have that fish on board. I think that was when we had the women on board. That was their first time out fishing.
Is that Sherry?
No, I got my wife, Mike Monto, which you have on a couple of podcasts on lobstering and stuff like that. And you were,
well, he's on my old YouTube channel. Yep.
And his wife and Pedro's wife, Patricia.
Yeah, I think that might have been. That might even have
been. Yeah,
been
you got a picture of them there.
Picture. Yeah, whatever you had on that drive.
Yeah, here it is, right here.
The pictures.
There was a 39-inch striper at that point. That's not a big striper or whatever. I mean big, but not some of the monsters I've caught. But it was good.
Oh yeah, you're in the 50-pound club. You've had actually multiple 50-pounders over your career, if memory serves me right. Looks like
that was a good
day.
That was a good day. You have five nice stripers.
I'd call that a very respectable commercial day. I mean, look, there's some people out there that limit out and they get their 15 fish, and that's an extremely good day.
They're also out 24 hours too.
That's exactly where I was going with that. I mean, look,
I'm back at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning.
I think that's a pretty respectable commercial day right there. Come in with 4 or 5 nice fish. It's great if you can limit out, but not everybody's going to be able to do that.
Then my buddy, I took out Joe and Bobby out in this thing, and this is the first time they really got together with the outriggers, and we hit like 4. Joe has a little problem with his shoulder and stuff like that, and we hit 4 lines at once, and it was like chaos. But we got this one in, and this is a good sized fish. So yeah,
that was a 1 out of 4 situation, right?
Yeah.
There.
Oh yeah.
And that happens. Hey, sometimes
it was chaos.
Sometimes you get 0 out of 4 in a situation like that. So hey, you know what? 1 out of 4, we'll call that a moral victory. Right
Joe was
there.
a happy camper. I don't remember this one, but like I said, it was added to the collection. A good sized fish too.
Not bad. Not bad at all.
That's my son. He goes out and he's like, I call him like he's Marciano. He like when his son goes out, he's my lucky charm. Every time he goes out, this kid catches fish. I don't understand it. I'll go out and I won't catch a fish. He'll go out with me. We'll catch.
Playing off that analogy, is there going to be a scenario in the future where he's going to be running a lot of changes or running a separate boat?
He always wants to take it in, and I've let him once, but with very leery. You know how it is.
Yeah,
with that.
It's not. I mean, you do very well with that. You definitely have mastery over that boat. I mean, it's you could park that thing in the crack of someone's ass if you wanted to. But getting into that chute is not. It's not fucking amateur.
Not when you're that
folks.
deep.
No,
I'm all the way down the end, so I mean it is tough. But hey.
It's it'll give you a humble sandwich at least a few times a season.
Oh yeah, another nice big fish. I think you see what I think there's weeds on that one. I think that I was with you, and we came in from deep sea, and we went into like the 7. And Lynn.
I remember that one.
Yeah.
Yep,
and all of a sudden we put out a tube and worm.
That's
and
right.
It hit and we
it hit
totally
within 30
surprised.
seconds.
Right.
Yeah.
We were totally surprised.
That was a few years ago. That was when the number 7 was blowing up.
Hot.
Yeah, there was, and I mean I get some content that I can maybe put out over there, but go back to what we talked about earlier. When you get into the boat show, the parking lot scenario
that's
right
crazy.
there. I mean,
I call it bumper boats. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. It's not uncommon to get into those situations, and it's like there's just too many people in here.
I gotta get out of here.
Yeah, it's just
Goodbye.
know what? I mean, it's just hey, maybe you'll catch, maybe you won't. But yeah.
I'd rather have a good day than have an aggravating day.
Absolutely. So there she is, the legendary Lotta Changes.
I've done a lot to that boat, and it's an 86, and, I love it. It's because it's everything that I want. I mean, I could drive it from downstairs right there. You'll see it on the right-hand side of the boat. I can be with the crew and enjoy a fishing trip. I don't have to be up in the flybridge, up in the tuna tower up there, and when the fish lines hit, Okay, everybody get it, and do what they got. I mean,
Yeah, usually that's my job. Why is it I usually end up there whenever I go
I
on your
look at
boat?
all these boats now, and I sit there and I see the fly bridge. They don't have a driving station. They have it underneath the cabin or stuff like that. I don't want that. I'm looking, something like yours would be nice, even a center console or something like that. But this boat is perfect because I can take it out alone and I can do maneuvers, all the equipment and everything with it.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it's a boat that suits you well. You've done well with it.
That's my buddy Gary. Gary's bringing in and showing off. That's how we do the mackerel. Get the sabiki rig and get some mackerel. Get that bait well, because that's going to make our day. That's my son-in-law. My son-in-law, he's caught. He was in the Navy and stuff like that, and he's a navigation specialist in the Navy. And this guy could play with electronics and everything else, but when he gets out there, he has a blast. I mean, that's a big fish. In fact, a couple of other people were fishing in that area and caught just as big as fish as that one there, and it was a great day for all,
You think if he were on an aircraft carrier, they'd get mad if he put a few lines out behind that thing? He was trolling a couple of Niner rigs. You think he?
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Oh yeah. Hey, listen, I'm not gonna. I got shot at it when going out to tuna territory, just trying to troll out there because people had their lines out and spent umpteen dollars for bait and everything else, and here I am coming in trolling by them.
You're lucky they didn't throw weights at your boat.
That happened too down in Lynn. Not my boat though, and I saw it happen. Just another one. You see the shadow right there. Another solo. Probably our first fish of the day in that one, but a good one.
Yeah, typically on a commercial day, there's usually a couple of them in there.
And that's Joe holding up that fish that he caught. I mean, look at him. He's not a small guy, but it's a good-sized fish.
Oh, you can definitely tell that's a sizable fish there. Not super long, but definitely it's got some shoulders on it. It's got some girth for sure. It's all about the girth these days. That's what, so I've been told.
That's what she said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've heard.
Yeah. That was Gary again. We had a big streak going on when I was with Gary a lot, and we caught some big fish. Good times.
Yeah.
I again, don't remember that one, but I know that's a good, nice sized fish right there.
There you go. That
was a good day.
Now that's a good commercial day right there. Yeah. No, absolutely.
Some good sized fish.
That's what you want to see at the end of the day on a good commercial day, right?
That one's just there. You got the gripper in its mouth and stuff like that, and up against the side, measuring it out.
That's another thing that I think that I'm gonna emphasize more this year is the lip gripper.
Definitely.
With the smaller fish, the smaller fish you want to net them, but these bigger fish usually just get so gassed by the time you get them up on the side of the boat that you've got a decent shot of getting a good lip grip on them, and it's the best way to handle these bigger fish.
Those plastic ones are pretty good.
They're great.
Again, another gift from my buddy Howard.
All right, and it looks like that is the end of the road there for the pictures that you brought. So, Bob, any fish stories here that you can tell us? Anything that stands out in your mind? Is there one that got away that that still to this day doesn't escape your mind, or one that you're surprised that you got, or just
There's
any
plenty
good stories?
of those, but I'm gonna give you one shot one. I was together with my son-in-law and George Gagnon. All right, and we were on the boat. We're in one of our spots. I'm not going to name the spot, but anyways, a good fishing spot. So we got out there, and there's boats, not like it was at the 7, but all these boats were all around, but not, boat to boat. And we hooked up on a fish. The line was squealing out there. It was unbelievable, and everybody's just waiting and sitting there and waiting for this fish to come up, and he's reeling, and we're getting close, and it's about 6 feet from the boat, and boy, here we go, the one that got away. I mean, it was like a 15-minute fight or whatever, but yeah, it was the one that got away. And nobody got to see it. I mean, well, I guess George saw it in a big fish. That's all I can tell you.
Yeah, I think everybody has their one or two that got away.
But I'm not a fish storyteller, so it's the one that really got away.
The one of them that stands out in my mind for me, about 2 seasons ago, I was out off in the hunt, fishing by myself. I hooked into something pretty sizable. And I'm thinking like, okay, this is probably like about a 44, 45-inch striper the way that it's fighting. It's fighting pretty aggressively. And then I get this fish closer to the boat, and this thing started to really put some heat on. And I'm thinking like, I don't know, maybe this isn't a striper. And, is it a bluefish maybe? Maybe a really big blue, but it would have been a little too early in the season for it to be a bluefish. Well, I got the thing up, just guesstimate, probably about maybe 20 feet away from the boat. I didn't get a great look at it, but I got a look at it. Whatever it was it was black. It was a black image in the water. And I don't know necessarily that the fish itself was a black fish, but it's just, I didn't get a great look at it, but it didn't have that brightness that a bluefish has. It didn't have that brightness. It didn't have that color. It didn't have like that green or bluish tint that a blue is going to have, or even a striper is going to have. So I got it about 20 feet away, and then pull the hook. Line snaps back. I kind of do one of these right here. So, fuck. All right.
Did you take a black shark?
Well, here's the thing. I pulled the hook, or so I thought, and then I look at the leader.
Hook was straight?
The hook was bitten in half.
Oof.
And that was one of those Gamakatsu 4X hooks,
God.
too. Those are the really durable ones.
Oh, yeah.
So whatever this was bit the hook clean in half. So it had to have been some type of shark. Maybe I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe a smaller thresher shark or something like that. But whatever that was.
The thresher is almost, you'd be able to know by the tail anyways, And
again, didn't get a great look at it, but whatever I saw it was not a striper, it was not a bluefish.
It had to be a powerful fish.
It was. I mean, it bit that hook clear in half.
Wow.
Those Gamakatsu, especially those 4Xs, those things have some strength to them. So, it just goes to show you there are some creatures lurking around out there that are not quite within the realm of what most people realize might be in these waters.
I forgot even to bring up, and I'm going to make this short, but I was even at the pot. My wife is a seamstress, and we used to take the mackerel and freeze them, and then we'd bring them back, and we'd cut open the stomachs and put weights into the stomach and put weight into its mouth, sew up the mouth, and sew the fish back up. And not for nothing, we ended up getting 2 tunas, and like Bobby Siniswasu and a couple of other people were over there right by Egg Rock that hit the lines, and we lost all the line because we weren't equipped to go tutoring. So.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think that a lot of people don't realize that the smaller tunas, the footballs, the 50 to 100 pound class fish, they come in a lot closer than most people think. People think that tuna are only at Stellwagen. They were inside of Boston Harbor a couple of years ago. There were confirmed reports of people seeing bluefin tuna. Now, granted, not giants, but the footballs.
This guy turned around last year and pulled his boat out of Boston Harbor right at the tip of Winthrop, pulled his boat about, half a mile and had a tuna on board, and that's how it was reported.
Yeah. You're not going for a Nantucket sleigh ride from a striper or a bluefish.
Exactly.
I mean, I've seen some of the bigger stripers maybe pull the boat a little bit. Okay, like a couple feet.
But not like that.
But not like that. No, and that's there definitely are some fish out there, and I hope we start seeing more of those fish. It's a crapshoot. It's not like you can necessarily get out there and try to target them.
Look at the last couple of years. We've been picking up baby bonita. I mean, we never seen bonita.
Squid too. I mean, we know squid occasionally. We're starting to see a lot more squid out there.
We'll see how things change.
Yeah,
keep it up.
Yeah. So like I said, there's definitely some bigger fish out there than what most people realize that there are. But anyway, Bobby, I think this was a great episode today. And I think we covered a lot. And really, it's excellent having you on here. And wish you a great season out there. I think you're going to do very good. And
see what happens. Only time will tell.
All right.
Thanks, Anthony.
All right, Bobby, thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, we'll go
and to everybody
around
out there, thank you so much for tuning in. Make
Thanks,
sure you guys
J&J.
tune in for the next one, and we look forward to seeing you again. For now, Captain Z, wrapping up episode 2 of the Primetime One Fishing Podcast. Make sure you check us out on social media, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Give a like, give a subscribe over there, and on YouTube, make sure you hit that little bell notification so you know when we put new content out, and we'll see you in the next episode.